Welcome to the Beyond the Bucket Show, a podcast centered around optimizing all life's buckets. We all have buckets we are balancing: coaching, entrepreneurial ventures, family, passion projects, and health. Let's all take this journey together and become bucket fillers. And here's your host, Chris McSwain.
Welcome back to Beyond the Buckets. Very excited to be back. It's been a long time. We took a little summer break off, but we've got a fantastic coach, one who's been doing it for so long at Cupertino High School, and I have a lot of respect for him and how he goes about his business. Welcome to the program, Craig Ellegood.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, Coach. Well, we'll put you on the hot seat just to start, so it doesn't have to do about basketball right away, but why don't you give everybody a fun fact about yourself before we dive into all this podcast has to offer?
I probably listen to a podcast every single day, and I've been doing so for probably the last 6 years or so. Every single day there's a podcast of mine that I'll listen to. I've got a bunch downloaded on my phone. I like to listen to Bill Simmons. Yeah. I really enjoyed listening to The Low Post with Zach Lowe until he just got released from ESPN.
I saw that.
There's another one called, I just started listening to called Slamming the Backboard. Is it?
Slapping Glass.
Slapping Glass. Yeah.
Slapping Glass.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. And then there's some football ones and smart lists and things like that. So I like podcasts.
That's good. Did you ever tune into Beyond the Buckets before you were on as a guest?
No, I hadn't seen until you and I ran into each other at Costco and you mentioned it. Then I kind of looked it up then. But yeah, I had not before that. Yeah.
That is a fun fact that we ran into each other at Costco, and I was like, Coach, we got to get you on the podcast. And so that was kind of where I asked you to be the guest. But there was other coaches on here that said that you should be a guest. One of them, Pat Judge, said that you should be on because I was talking about some coaches that, are very well respected and have done it for a long time and that don't kind of get the notoriety that I think some of the coaches that maybe in our league get. And you are one of those names that he mentioned. And I've always had an affinity for how you run your business and how you did things. And
well, thanks. That's nice. Nice of you to say, and nice of Patrick to say that too.
Teams from the Gokul Nadasan era. Yeah. We used to come and watch your teams play, and you guys were so good back then. And I'll get into all that, but I just wanted to say that I respect you, what you've done, and the number of years. I couldn't even check how many years because on the Max Preps, it starts at 04.
1990 was my first year.
Oh my goodness. I can't even do the math on that, but that's 35 years there.
It's coming up on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of this season. So you've been at Cupertino that whole time?
No, I did 5 years at Fremont High School.
Okay.
3 years at Mountain View High School.
Wait, did you coach Jason Townsend then?
I was an assistant coach when Jason was a senior. I did coach Jason when he was a freshman, as I did 1 year of Frost soft basketball at Fremont during, I must have been like the 86 season or something like that. Okay. So I've known Jason for a long, long time. And then I did 2 years of Lynbrook, and then I came to Cupertino, started Cupertino, I think, in 2000.
Okay. So you have been there for 25 years. That's an amazing accomplishment. Just being somewhere for so long and so entrenched, and you've had so much success there. And I guess that leads me to the question, like, what's the origin story? Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? What got you into coaching? That sort of thing.
Well, I grew up, I'm local. I graduated from Fremont High School, played basketball at Fremont High School, played on a pretty good team my senior year. We were CCS champions, and we made it to the Final Four in the state. We lost to Bishop O'Dowd in the NorCal finals. The Bishop O'Dowd team that was loaded. Brian Shaw was their sixth man.
Oh, wow.
And he was 1 year behind me. I believe he was a junior that year. But they had guy named Mark McCatherine, who went on to play at USF. They had a guy named Kevin Moss, who ended up being Rookie of the Year in baseball for the Mariners, I believe it was. He was 6'4". They had a guy named Eric Holloway, who went to Arizona State. And then they had a guard by the name of Tony Ronzoni, who I think is still in the NBA in some capacity as I don't know if it's a scout or what have you, but he's been around basketball for a long, long time. So we ended up making it to that NorCal final game at the Coliseum. We had won our first 2 games, but Bishop O'Dowd beat us. They were loaded. We pretty much played with 5 guys, but we ended up losing that game. And then after that, I played a year at De Anza. That didn't go great for me at De Anza, and I knew it wasn't a spot that I kind of wanted to stay. But I went back and talked to my old coach at the time, and he said something to me about, well, why don't you come back here and kind of help out a little bit and see how that goes. And so I started doing that. And what happened was my coach, Phil Kelly, he would leave in the summer, and he spent his summers in Lake Tahoe. So he turned the varsity summer program over to me. So I was like 19, 20 years old, and I started coaching varsity basketball in the summer, and I would coach 20 to 25 games. And I kind of like this. And that kind of got me, I guess, kept the competitive juices going a little bit. And I found like a little bit of a niche for myself where I thought this isn't bad. And then that kind of directed me to, when I transferred from De Anza to San Jose State, to get into the teaching program and go through physical education and get my degree and my credential and all that stuff. And just kind of naturally moved into teaching and coaching.
Right. And so you teach PE there at Cupertino as well?
Yeah.
Wow. So a lot of different ways that we can go, but the first question that I have for you is, how have you been able to stay renewed every single year and just come back and just give the amount of energy it takes? So to be coaching for 35 years, there was a time where I thought, man, I don't know how long I was going to do this. And then COVID hit, and it was kind of like quiet for a little bit, but that was like the quiet that I needed. I started coaching in 2004.
Uh-huh.
So this is going to be my 20th season coaching high school basketball,
Right.
or actually 21st if it goes into 2025. But I've been renewed over the last few years, and so it was like COVID was like the perfect thing for me coaching, because then I can kind of sit, and I actually missed it. And so when I came back, I was ready to go. But what has kept you in this game so long, for 30 plus years?
I think, one, I like practice. So it doesn't bother me to go to practice. I like practice. I like trying to add new things. I like game planning, trying to figure out what we can do to maybe slow down in the other team or change things up. I like trying out new things on offense. So that's one thing. I like the competition that you have every year. I mean, it's definitely difficult when you have a team that isn't maybe the most talented. And I don't mean from the standpoint of, they can't win the championship, but just something every once in a while. Cupertino, I've had it, and I'm sure other coaches have had too, where you're going to struggle, and you're struggling to win just a couple of games. That gets tough, and that makes it hard. But I always felt like, as long as I kind of had a group that was in the mix, where we could kind of be in that 500 range, where we were capable of every once in a while surprising someone that it kept my interest level. And I like basketball. And so, I guess the other thing is, it's hard, is I right now still can't kind of see myself not doing it. So, I enjoy coaching. So, and basketball is the thing I like. So, and I'm watching basketball all the time. I like to watch NBA, but I like to watch college. I think you can definitely grab a lot of stuff from college that you can then transplant into your own program at the high school level at different times. And so it just is always kind of is a spot for me where it keeps my interest level, and it gives me a sense of purpose, I guess.
Right. And I've heard a lot of pros say this is when they're not willing to put in the work that is necessary for them to stay on the same level that they have been. I think that's when it's time to hang it up. And I feel the same way. If I'm not watching film, if I'm not watching basketball, if I'm not enjoying it. Now I have changed like the since I've got kids now.
Right.
Um, I can't let that weigh on me, whatever's going on in the season. I don't want that to weigh on me personally and put that weight on my wife or my two children because they don't deserve that. Even though my wife signed up for this, she knew I was a coach when I met her 15 years ago, but they don't deserve the weight of that season. So I try to decompress as much as I possibly can. So if we have a home game, for instance, I'll watch the film right after because now with the huddle cameras right in the gyms, you can just go straight to the office and watch it. So I'll watch it there. I will just go home from there and then I can be dad and husband. But I've been trying to be more efficient with my time. Sometimes back in the day when practice ends at 6, right? And then you end up not getting home till 7:30 because you do this, you do this, you do this. So now I try to end and I try to make sure that I get home to be there for them because that's important. They're just as important, although I'm doing this other thing during this time. But you have to, manage your priorities. How have you been able to manage your priorities? I know you coached your son too. I'm going to get to that in a little bit because I have some selfish questions I want to ask you. But yeah, how have you manage your time with your wife and your kids and coaching?
I think it evolves a little bit as you grow, as people age. So not only as I age, but as my kids age, my family age. So I had the stage obviously where I was coaching and I didn't have any kids, and then my kids were young, and then they kind of got a little bit older. And when they got older, they wanted to come to the gym and be around stuff, whether it was at practice or just watching the game or maybe doing the film for me, things like that. So they got more involved. I was fortunate for me that I had a couple of boys, and both boys were interested in athletics. And so I think also I spent a lot of time, not always in season, but like in the fall, I coached soccer. I coached youth soccer. In the springtime, I coached Little League Baseball. I also coached a little bit of NJB basketball
Yep.
with my boys. So I always had some things that, we definitely were spending time together. And then I think the other piece is kind of like you said, when your game is over, you've got to reflect a little bit about what went right, what went wrong, and things like that.
Yep.
But you have to go home, and when you go home, it's separate. And so I think I did a pretty good job of not really bringing that part home. Meaning, I always kind of think about this too. I think things are never as bad as they seem,
Yeah.
but also never as good as they seem either. There's always going to kind of be a balance where things are going to kind of fall back into place. And so I think that just whatever happened in that game, at that point, you have to go home and connect, like you said, from a family perspective, and what's the next thing that has to happen there. And usually, how we all play at night, I got to get to bed and I got to get up the next day and get things going with whatever we're doing the next day. Usually going back to work, kids going to school, and life moves on. So you have to find your time that fits for you in terms of the basketball piece, and you have to find your time in terms of how you're going to do those extra things for basketball, like you said, film or making your practice plan and things like that. But most of the time, I didn't do a lot of that at home. I would do more of it at school.
I got you now. Go ahead.
So what would you miss?
You said most of the time.
I said most of the time I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing my basketball stuff at home. I was doing most of it at school. So it was a different time and away from home. So when I did come home, hopefully I was able to give the necessary attention to my family and then move on. But sometimes, I had something that I had to get down right then and there, and I wanted to jot a note down to myself so I didn't forget things. But like I said, I really tried not to be too up or down after a game. I just wanted to be able to go home.
For sure. And most of the time we're the only ones that really care about the outcome of the game, because we do put so much time, energy, and effort into coaching basketball. And when it doesn't go your way, it drains you because you put
Sure.
so much time into it, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for coaches, and people that aren't in that industry don't really know what that really means. Maybe somebody in sales, they've been working really hard to get a client, and they put all this work into this, and they didn't come out with the outcome that they wanted. That's kind of like the same type of feeling, I would say, for somebody in the business world. And it never gets easier as long as I've done it, and as long as you've done it. I don't want to speak for you, but it just never gets easier. But you do get that perspective where, like, hey, I got to move on. And we tell our players, next play. I know all coaches do that, right? We got to move on to the next play. And that's really what I've been trying to do, is just move on to the next play. Because at the end of the day, like, we don't remember, the kids aren't going to remember the wins and the losses unless you win like a championship or have a really fantastic year. Most of the time they're going to remember the experience that they had. And back in your day, you remember your team because you guys had a great team and you went to a championship, but you probably remember more of the experience piece. And I think that's something that we have to do a better job of as a whole industry, is making sure that the kids have a fantastic experience for their 4 years playing high school basketball. Because you and I both know, from playing to coaching for a while now, there's nothing like it. You can't get that same feeling by just hanging out with your buddies or watching a game. There's just nothing like it.
Right. Well, I think you're always trying to, like you said, with the experience, you're trying to maximize the experience with whatever your talent is, whoever the kid, you're trying to maximize the season to try to give them the best experience throughout. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't happen. But I think that's one of the major goals is, instead of thinking it always in terms of wins and losses, you're trying to maximize the environment, maximize that time. Because the other thing too, I think people forget is, it's really cool to win a championship, to win a league title, to win a CCS title, or whatever it is that happens. But when you do that, let's say, 2 days, 3 days, and the season's over, there's still a letdown. And that letdown is the fact that you're not in the season anymore.
Right.
And the process of going through the season is one of the great things about sports and the great experiences that you get as a high school kid if you're fortunate enough to be in a good situation. When that season hits, and if you do have success, that makes it even all the better, I guess. But it's still going to be a letdown when the season's over. It's over, and we don't have practice anymore.
Yeah.
It may be, and I always felt that I don't feel it maybe quite the same as a coach, although I do like I said, practice. But I remember as a player, when it was done, it's like, wow, it's done. And it kind of hits your heart.
No, 100%. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like, what do you do after that? I mean, cause I played football, basketball, baseball. So, but after my sophomore year, I didn't play baseball anymore. So once that season was over, after school, yeah, we would have AAU like in the evenings, but we didn't have anything to do after school from basically March all the way to June when school
Right.
got out. So it was like, wow, this is this void that is now missing. And that's really like the natural drug of coaching. And I think that's the reason players don't love practice, but I love practice because that's where you get good. That's where you can change behavior. That's how you can get just a little bit better. I've heard coaches talk about, Chris Oliver, he runs the basketball podcast. You should definitely listen to that one because he's got a lot of good stuff, and he's brought in hundreds of coaches. He's got, 300 plus episodes. And one of the reasons why I probably started this podcast, because yeah, we talk about basketball, but we talk about more of the stuff that kind of surrounds it. And a lot of times as coaches, we don't talk about this sort of stuff. And what was some of the hardest times that you went through as a coach? And I guess that's the next question I have for you is, what were some of the most challenging times in your, 30 plus year coaching career? And how did you get over it?
Well, I think sometimes you have the hardest things is when you have a group that maybe you feel isn't as competitive as they need to be. And I think that's happening more now than it did back in the day. I think that that kids are, you still have kids who do want to play and want to compete, but it's not as prevalent. And part of it seems like the culture has changed a little bit, and that families have changed, and that a lot of times parents don't understand it, and they don't understand the amount of time that you need to put in to do this to try to be successful. And that also that it's very important because it's a team, that the team and the group has a commitment to each other to try to, again, to maximize the season. And I think that right now is one of the biggest challenges. And I guess my answer hasn't been perfect, but my answer is to try to stay consistent and just to keep letting them know that, this is the standard that we have to meet. And this is the standard we have to meet in order to try to achieve success. And it doesn't guarantee success, but it's something that we need to do to give ourselves a chance at success. And sometimes you turn the corner a little bit with it, and people buy in. Like the team that I had last year, when we had a nice year and the guys came together and won 25 games. Well, it was a big difference because the previous season we really struggled and we lost. And that was the majority of those kids. And we struggled a lot that year with the understanding of commitment and putting their time in and being accountable. And they changed a little bit, and they figured it out, during this previous the summer league before their senior seasons for most of them. And then it got a little bit better, and it was a little bit better for them in the fall. And we started practice and stuff, and then we had a little bit of success winning an early season tournament, and it seemed like the light bulb clicked, and then we didn't have to really worry about commitment to the team from then on as terms through the rest of the season. And so that made that nice, and it made it I guess a little less stressful because we were all on the same page.
Right.
And so I thought that really worked out well. But every season's different, and groups of kids are different. And if you don't have some strong leadership with some of your players that really want to play, then sometimes it doesn't get fixed, and it becomes a real struggle. And to me, part of that coaching piece that you want at least, or part that you can live with, if we're given effort and we're really trying to do things to improve, to get better, then, and sometimes we're just not quite good enough to make it, we're not always excited about that, but I think you can live with that, and you can respect everyone in the program in terms of what's going on. And so I think that's another one of those goals that you want to try to get everyone to buy in to the team aspect of not just the game itself, but just the overall program, about being on time, being at practice, giving effort at practice all the time, and trying to improve not only for yourself, but for the group itself, because the more competition that you put in practice, the better opportunities you have for the team to improve and grow. And so I've kind of found that sometimes that's not always the easiest thing to happen. And I find myself addressing the team more about that at different times with different groups. But I guess the other point would be, if I don't have to address it too often, then we're probably in a better place.
Right. And so for those people that don't know, that are listening, you went 25-2 last year, but the prior year you went 3-21 or something like that. So All right, sorry about that. I guess we got some internet issues. How were you any different from that two or three win season versus the season where you only lost two games? Like, did
Yeah,
you
I think
change?
you are different because I think that, well, there's things you try to be the same with, because I try to continue to hold the same standards that I want to have happen, because I am a believer that um, if you break from your standards, you might find a little bit of short-term success, but you're not going to find the long-term success that you want. And so I think that it's more important to stay the course and keep going. But what I do find that happens is um, when things change a little bit, and the group becomes a little more excited, and you're winning some games, that you are able to try more things. There's more things that you can do at practice. There's more things to try to challenge them, or to say, hey, you know what, let's try this on this offensive set, or let's add this to this offensive set, or let's change the defense here for this. We're going to do this is where we're going to start in the man, but we might switch it to this. And if we switch it, this is how we're going to play this. And so I think that there's more excitement in practice. And so therefore there's more energy to try these things. When you're on the flip side of, like you said, a 3-21 season, it gets to the point where you're trying each day to keep practice fresh. You're trying different things in terms of just to try to have an energy level. But the team is in a different mental space, and trying to bring on too many new things, I don't think is maybe the right thing to do at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be difficult for everybody to go through a season like that. And it says a lot, number one, about you and your character to continue to fight and show up every single day, which probably has to show those kids that this is a leader that we are willing to follow, because that's not easy for just the coach even to be able to do that. And then for those players to buy in and see what happens when you do put that preparation and the work that is required just to not guarantee success like you mentioned, but it just guarantees growth. We're going to get better. We're going to get better because of the work that we're putting in. What a great life lesson for all those young men that were on that team in the program. And I can't think of any other scenario in which you're a young person and you have to fight through that much adversity and you see the outcome on the other side with such a great season. So I mean, I really applaud the players as well as you and your staff, because that's not easy. I mean, last year that was the first losing season that I've had as a head coach.
Uh-huh.
And I know how that felt, but that just made me more hungrier. And we were one game under 500, but that made me so much more hungry. And we were like 12-2 outside of league. But when we get to our league, it's just so competitive, and we had such a young team. And now we'll see where these kids are at this year, because I know we're going to be better. The league is still great, of course, but I know that we're going to be better, and that's all we can control. And then we only have one senior this year. So what is that going to look like next year? But I don't want to think about that. I don't want them to think about that, because we need to focus on right now, because you never know what is down the road. You have to, and you said it earlier, like, you just have to be where your feet are and be present and enjoy all these moments, because they go by so fast and we don't realize that we're always, oh, we have to do this, we're ripping and running, we're trying to figure out things. And that's the biggest thing that, number one, that I will continue to remind myself is be where my feet are. Enjoy this process, enjoy this practice, enjoy this minute, because once that season is over, we can't ever get that back.
No, you're right. Once it's done, it's done. And you, like I said, it goes back to that thing about trying to maximize the season, maximizing the experience for yourself, but for most importantly for the players. And I think the other thing too, that one of the things we always try to talk about is it's not my team and it's not their team, it's our team. So both have a function. They have a function. I have a function. but it's our team. So we have to be accountable to each other, both them as players, but me as a coach. And you have to, as a coach, I think the other thing is that you have to listen to the players. I always found that the team is usually playing its best, especially as you've gotten through your non-league season, you get towards your league season, when the team starts making suggestions to me about what they want to do. Hey, should we run this now? Hey, coach, should we do this? You want to run that? Okay, sounds good. Let's do it. And so when that means they're thinking and they've bought in, and to me, it means more that they've really kind of getting to that point where they're maximizing this themselves, that they're taking more ownership over it, and they're really thinking about what's going on. And so I always found, like, when I get teams like that, then I've got a pretty good team and we're headed in the right direction.
Right. I want to switch topics just a little bit. Tell me how you have crafted your offense, because if anybody's ever watched your game, you've got very high level actions, very high level sets, ball movement, player movement. Everybody seems to always be where they're supposed to be. How have you developed your system over the years? How do you continue to create different things and advantages for your team on the court? But yeah, very high level offensive coach, I would say. Of course, you're a great defensive coach too, but I really like your offense.
Well, part of it came from, again, back to when I played in high school, there was no shot clock. And so our coach emphasized movement, motion. And we just would move it. And the way we played is, for the most part, you didn't take a bad shot because you could always reset and go again. And it was just, okay, do it again, go again. And there's times back in that when I played where we could have the ball for 50 seconds and we weren't per se stalling, but it was just, okay, we didn't get the right shot. Let's go again. Let's go again. So from that standpoint, I was a big believer in movement, motion, because what I found, or the way I see it, is at some point, the more movement and motion you get, there's going to be someone who's going to break down. So if your team's competent with the ball and they move the ball efficiently and they throw good passes and things like that, make their cuts, somewhere on the defense, there's going to be a breakdown. And then that's where you're going to, per se, get your play, get your shot, and get hopefully a high percentage play. So when I first coached, I used a lot of some of the sets that I used in high school.
And let me interject really quickly. What percentage of your offense is action based? DHO, pin downs, flares, all that, where they're just playing free flowing, maybe out of your break. What percentage is sets, and what percentage is your pattern motion?
Well, the pattern motion is the overriding thing. The other things that you say, the sets, not all, but a lot of the sets come off of the pattern motion, where I call them wrinkles. Okay, so everybody's got it. You got to learn the wrinkles. So when we probably run dummy offense at least 20 minutes virtually every practice. And so,
are you going 5-on-0? Are you going
5-on-0? Yeah, okay. 5-on-0. So we go through that, and so I tell those guys, look, you all have to know the wrinkles. You've got to almost, in a sense, run offense to try to trick your teammates to make sure they're on top of the wrinkles. Then, in terms of just playing out of it, we emphasize that, hey, you can all make the random cut that you want to make, as long as you know you're making the random cut. If you know you're making the random cut, then we're fine. If you make a cut and you don't know what you're doing because you're confused, then that's a problem. So you got to make sure you understand what we're doing. So if we're doing something and you see how the defense is cheating somewhere, and you see this as the play, the opening to make, go do it. I want you to do it. I don't want us to be robotic. I want you to make reads on offense and make different cuts. So sometimes it's a baseline back cut. Sometimes it's a cut from the wing. Sometimes it's a curl cut. Sometimes it's a guy coming off a double, but instead of coming off the double, he comes off a single, and different things. So that's always something that we kind of hit. Again, some kids get it and some kids don't get it quite as much. But the real thing that changed for me happened, I think it was around 2004-ish or so. I had a team that was pretty good. We won 20 games. We won league. We ended up in the playoffs, but we ended up going up to Sequoia, and we played a team that Pete Simos was coaching at the time. And we had a decent game with them in terms of the first half, but we ended up kind of getting blitzed in the second half, and it was just because of the pressure that they overrode us with their pressure and so forth, and we didn't do a good enough job handling it. And so I started to look at that and I go, there's something maybe that I need to try differently. And so what I ended up doing is I kind of gravitated to that Princeton offense, and I ended up getting a tape of a Princeton game when the old coach Pete Carril was doing it, and I just spent the summer watching that thing almost every single day, and I would just watch it over and over and over again, and try to catch little things. And as I kept watching it, I'd say, they did this here. That looks like that's a key for this. Okay, and so I started to gather that stuff, and so we started to push that and implement some of that stuff in the summer. And then what also was happening during that time was that's when the New Jersey Nets were playing. They had good teams with Jason Kidd. They went to the finals. And Eddie Jordan was one of the coaches, and he was a big Princeton guy. And so you watch and you'd see the things that the Nets would run. And so those would become more like they couldn't run the same motion because of the shot clock, but they still were running the cuts, and then they would have different things out of the sets or out of the offense. And so that's why if you hear our guys always yell Jersey. So from when I started, we just call Princeton Jersey. So we run Jersey. Then out of Jersey, they know that if we're in Jersey and the ball goes guard to guard, we do this. If the ball goes guard to wing, we do this. If the ball goes to the center, we do this. If we dribble across, we do this. And so all of that comes out of Jersey. And so, and then from there, it's just a matter of watching different things. I get that email every morning from the coach's toolbox. You see something there that you like or whatever. You go, gosh, can this fit with what we do? Okay, yeah, we can use this. All right. And now if we use this here out of our 2-guard set and when the ball goes here, this is how we'll add this or implement it. Or how are we going to key this and so forth. And so that's kind of the thing is when we run a lot of the stuff doesn't have to be keyed verbally. It was just keyed by us calling out Jersey, and now we know what we're in, and then it's where does the ball go, what's the action of the player, and so forth, and then that's kind of how we can change offense. Now obviously there's still other sets that we run that are specific that aren't from that set, that are different that we run, and there's I would say in general we usually have somewhere between 30 to 40 offensive things that we do. And then from a man set. And then there's obviously a bunch of zone stuff that we do and some trap things that we do. But it's just, again, goes back to the repetition of doing it over and over again. And then, like I said, when you count it like that, there seems like it's a lot, but some of it is very much married to each other. And it's just little subtleties that are different.
Right. I spoke at a coaching clinic this weekend up in St. Francis, and there's a lot of great coaches there. And so I really enjoy touching base with other coaches and just seeing what they're doing and how they're doing it. And Doc Shepler spoke right before me, but then he stuck around and watched me, which I was like, you should be doing the offense because he's a Princeton guy too. But we've changed and switched our offense based on personnel. There was a time that we did run a little bit of Princeton, just some of the basic actions like chin or just the reverse, to hit the back screen from the nail or the high post and get an easy opportunity that way. And then we came up with like a 5-out system, very similar to Princeton, but just with different principles. So if we dribble handoff, we're going to trigger these actions, basically a pistol, or we reverse it, then it's going to end up pinned down to a zoom, or however we're going to enter it. And so just my assistant and I, we just sat in the garage and just kind of started drawing stuff up here. This makes sense to us. And then because we were doing it one way for so many years. And then 2 years ago, we graduated 10 players and we had to come up with something different because we were going to have only guards. And we've kind of morphed and molded this situation, and now we have post players again. So now we're trying to put the post players out on the perimeter. And a lot of people would say, well, why do you want your post out there? Well, they can hand off and they can dribble twice. If they can dribble twice and hand off, they can do all the stuff that we need them to do.
Sure.
And teach them how to play basketball. And then the one thing that I talked about in the clinic was, why do we run offense? Well, we want to score, obviously, but the essential part is gain an advantage.
Right.
And we want to gain the advantage. And so you're running your prints and stuff, because if you get that advantage, you're hopefully that will lead to a scoring opportunity. So I say it like this: gain it. The second part is much harder, and that's keeping that advantage. So now maybe we gain the advantage, and now we force a rotation, we kick it out, and now we have a long closeout, right? We can take that shot, but we can probably keep the advantage because now they're running at us and we go by, and maybe we get an even more wide open layup or a more wide open three. We call them a driveway three because when you're in your driveway, nobody's on you, and you just get those driveway threes. And then the last part of it is going to be finishing the advantage. And what I found that you have to have really all three of those pieces in order for you to have a really high level offense. Gain it, keep it, finish it, because you can gain the advantage or keep the advantage and not finish it. And then what was the sense of running all these actions? So the question I have for you is, how are you utilizing your skill development plan in order for your players to, because you're doing a great job of gaining the advantage and keeping that advantage and keeping the defense off balance. What do you do in your skill development to make sure that they finish that? Because that is ultimately why we run offense, is to score points.
I also like to say recognize the advantage, because I think that the recognition of it is really important, because I said, and you obviously as a coach know this, every once in a while you're going to run something and it works and you're just wide open. But that's not the case normally. Normally it's something that you're coming off something and now you're going to gain this advantage. And now are you able to recognize that you have it and then make the correct play to take advantage of that advantage and push the ball to the correct space and have the correct footwork, whether you're coming off a flare screen or whether you're going to curl or whatever the case may be. So a lot of things that we do, we do have a lot of shooting drills, obviously, but then we do a lot of different things where we kind of try to mimic offensive opportunities, where we set up, whether it's through chairs or whether it's through dummy screens, and we say, okay, you've got two choices here off this. You're going to make this cut. You're going to curl off it. Now you're going to curl and you're going to catch and you're going to go up and you're going to shoot a extended layup right over the front of the rim. No, not off the backboard. It's got to go straight in, right off the front, over the front of the rim. We're going to do it on the right side. We're going to do it on the left side. Oh, now we're going to do a back cut. You're going to do a back cut. You got to shoot this. No, it's a reverse layup. It has to be a reverse layup. Shoot it this way. No, you're going to come off this time and you're going to catch, curl, and shoot. Or you're going to come off this time and your footwork's going to be, you're going to step flat off of it. And now we practice the passer making the correct pass. Sometimes you need to take an extra dribble to get the angle to make the pass. So we try to create, I guess, the different scenarios that they're going to see, and pick, a couple of those things each day as part of kind of our early practice game plan to kind of give them opportunities where we're going to shoot and shoot off of those specific situations. And then we'll also do things like, we'll play one-on-one, but they only get two dribbles. We'll pick, different spots, whether you're playing from the top of the key or you're playing from the wing, or sometimes we'll play some one-on-one where a dribble's involved and they get, say, 3 or 4 dribbles max. They have to create their shot off the dribble, and they have a certain space on the court. Like I always talk to them about, you kind of have a box. So you have a box that you can make this move on, because the reality is, guys, you have to understand it's a 5-on-5 game. So you're not going to be dribbling the ball all the way across the key, turning your back, spinning back, and all those types of things. You have to make your move here, and whether you're going to shake the guy off and create space for a jump shot, or you're going to hesitate and get the guy to come up on you, and then you're going to try and drive him. You have to stay within this little box in terms of making your move. And so those are just, again, some of the things that we try to practice throughout the year to try to help them, when they get those advantages, to take advantage of it and finish plays. And also, I think too, to have a vocabulary with them to say, hey, remember when we did this? That's the play you're making right here, coming off this screen right now. That's the play. See how he's trailing you? You need to cut tighter. There needs to be a tight. Don't go wider. The wider you go, you're leaving space for him to catch up, and things like that.
Yep. You may not call it this, but do you guys work on protection plans once they gain and keep the advantage, but then the defense might be in front of them. So one of the examples would be a jump stop. That would be a protection plan in place. Jump stop, pivot from pressure to make a pass, or a Nash dribble where you just kind of dribble
Dribble through.
around the help defense, or a Barkley where you just put your back to them. And then as far as if you're off the ball, like a second cut, a 45 cut, a back. I know you guys obviously do back cuts, running your offense, but do you guys have a bunch of different protection plans? And if so, what are they?
I don't know if it's like that, but what we talk about is that, and practice is like, hey, you're going to have opportunities where you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a read on something, and it's okay to make that read. And again, maybe you're deviating from the quote unquote normal part of the offense. But the biggest part about that is, can you do that? And then if it doesn't work out, you need to be able to maintain possession of the ball. And so you can't just go, throwing up garbage. So now, if you make that hard drive to the baseline and you don't get there, what are you going to do with the ball? Well, you've got to, like you said, dribble it back out, turn your body in between the guy. But also we talk to our teammates about, hey, you have to recognize too, is he stuck? What are you going to do now? You have to move to get the ball. You can't stay in dead space where your teammates picked up the ball and there's a defender directly in between you and him. Even though that guy's might not be guarding you, he's in the way. You have to move out of that dead space to get the ball, to become a viable option, to get to, so that we can maintain the possession, I guess. And that's really kind of what the emphasis is that we want to maintain possessions as best we can, unless there's the last, 3 seconds, 2 seconds on the shot clock, and you have to throw the shot up. So I think that's kind of our approach to it, is that, there are opportunities for us where we make a decision to go, and we want you to do that. But we also want you to understand that you have to have a level of responsibility, that you have to recognize, hey, I didn't get where I thought I was going to get. And so therefore, it doesn't mean I just get to throw the thing up. I need to now protect the ball and maintain it. And then I think the last piece, yes, we definitely talk about the weak side guys drifting to the corner to give the guy that angle, that passing angle, if that possibly is an option at the time.
Yep. Yeah. And I got this term from my assistant because he was using it. But so let's just say we have a baseline drive. We always want somebody in the tail lights. So if I drive to the baseline from the right, now whoever the closest guard or whoever the closest player is on the other side is going to tail light. And so now you have one behind. So if I pivot from pressure, you should have that. And
Okay.
then we always want a slot cut. So 45, usually the help defense is coming over to take away that baseline drive. A slot cut a lot of the times is open. You obviously want the baseline drive and the drifter. So if you can throw it from, almost running out of bounds, that is the option. So those are usually our three options. So we have taillights behind, 45 cut, and then we have the baseline drive, baseline drift. And based on the offensive positions, there should always be at least two of those. You should always have somebody in the corner and somebody behind. You might not always have a 45 cutter if they're not in that slot, but I watched a ton of Villanova stuff off of their jump stops, and and that's something that we pride ourselves a lot. Like, we played this summer down in LA, and one of the coaches was like, "Man, you guys jump stop great." That was the best thing anybody could tell me, because we work on that so much. And we call it patient in the paint. And these are all terms that I didn't steal. I borrowed. I call it borrowed brilliance, because we as coaches, we talk about, I stole this from this coach, or they stole. No, we're borrowing and adding to it. So I call it borrowing brilliance. That's something that I said in the coaching clinic today, because that's really all this is. I mean, you say it one way, I say it one way, but it's generally the same thing and generally the same concept, and that's why I like picking your brain. And then when you add the addition, when I was saying gain it, keep it, finish it, and you were also saying recognize it. Wow, that's great. That's something that I can borrow and possibly add into our scheme in our scenario, because yeah, you do need to recognize what is going on and if this is a viable option for you. But yeah, patient in the paint is something that I borrowed as well too. And you have way more time than you actually, because you get to the paint because you got the advantage and you have to do something, especially on the girls side where it's like, oh, I got this, and then you get your shot blocked and they didn't even have to jump. But just patient in the paint, just having multiple solutions at the basket is something that I've really learned, because I didn't really think about this stuff early in my career. And that's why I'm so rejuvenated now. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about the game in a different way. But I also probably watched the game way more now than I used to when I first started.
That's good. That you're right. I mean, I completely agree with you about in terms of the borrowing and all that stuff, because you're constantly looking at different things and you're seeing how it fits for your team and how it fits with what you do. But I think kind of goes back to what you said about your personnel. I've always stayed with this Princeton stuff since I switched over, but there's an emphasis that changes in terms of who we have and what sets become more prevalent year by year, depending on the personnel. And I think that sometimes you'll see things and you'll go, oh, with this group, this will run better. This is a better fit for this group. And so you add that. And sometimes I add it and it's just for a year and we move on to something else the next time. But I think you're constantly looking at things that whether you call it, you want to tweak it or whatever the case may be, but you're definitely borrowing stuff constantly.
Yeah. Switching pivots here. Talk about, did you coach both your sons? I know you coached one because he played with Top Flight for a little while. But did you coach both your kids?
I coached both my boys. Yeah, both my boys ended up going to school at Cupertino, and I got to coach. My oldest son, George, played 4 years of varsity, and my youngest son, Jake, played 3 years of varsity.
Yeah, George played with us for a little bit. Who was his coach back then?
It was a guy, I forget his name, but he was like an assistant at UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
We've had so many coaches, but I know who you're talking about, obviously. So how was it coaching your kids? And so I coach my kids in all their sports. So they're playing football, basketball, baseball. I coach them all. And I don't know why the only one I don't coach is soccer, because I really don't know too much about soccer. So I could ask you some questions. But like you said earlier, I think, I've coached so many other kids. Why would I not spend that same time with my own kid? And it is spending time with your child, being able to coach their baseball team or their basketball team or their flag football team. So that is really cool. And to see, my son really is thriving in all of his sports now and really loves it. And he plays, a grade or two up. But how did you manage all that and not try to be too overbearing, but you had to push him a little bit, obviously.
Hard. But both of my boys were pretty good baseball players. They had a lot of success at the little league level and so forth. And so they both played baseball in high school. So we were kind of stuck in terms of what did they want to do? Because we live in Santa Clara. And so they would have been kids who would have either went to Santa Clara High School or Wilcox High School. But obviously with me working at Cupertino, we had the option to have them go there. But we I told them, you have to make the choice of what you want to do. If you feel like, you want to go continue, because most of your friends, baseball friends, are little leaguers over in Santa Clara, you certainly can continue your schooling and go to Santa Clara High School or Wilcox. We can investigate and see which one they'll send you to. But they said they wanted to go to Cupertino because they wanted to play basketball. And so they did. And for George, it worked out pretty good in terms of he got to play as a freshman, and he had a real good experience because I was able to play him half the game. And our team wasn't great that year, but we did make the playoffs. We made the CCS. We lost the first round game, but we were okay, and we were 500 in league, so we snuck in there. And he was important. He got to play. I tell you, he had a heck of a moment for anybody, not just a freshman. We had a game against Lynbrook where he made 2 free throws when we were down by 2 with 10 seconds left and sent it to overtime. And then in the overtime, we got a late steal, and the kid made a great pass to George, like a 40-foot pass up ahead, and George made a layup with 1 second to go at the buzzer.
That's awesome.
And so that was cool, right? So that, and then obviously being able to see that, but also kind of being able to share it with them in terms of the team winning and all that stuff. That was a lot of fun.
You got me tearing up over here, Coach.
Yeah. And then after that, he had 3 more years, and we ended up winning league his sophomore year. And then we had, and that was a really nice team that year because we got a good win in CCS against Palo Alto because we were a lower league team and they were an upper league team, and we beat them in the quarterfinals. We made it to the semis, and we lost to Piedmont Hills with Pete Simos. And then the next year, his junior year, was another nice team, and we had an epic game with Palo Alto in the was that the semis? I forget if it was the semis that went all the way down to the last minute or two. And the kid Miles Tension had a fantastic game.
I just I talked to his dad on Saturday at the clinic.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah. And so we had a really good game there, but we ended up losing that one. And then his senior year, we weren't quite as good, but we did make the playoffs, and so he got to do that. And his thing worked out good because of his age. See, the boys are different in terms of, like, George would turn 16 in the middle of his sophomore year, but my youngest son Jake, his birthday is different. He was 17 his entire senior year, so he was a little bit on the small side, and then it took a little bit more time for things to happen for him. His junior year, he was starting to get playing, but that was that COVID year where we played basketball in the spring. So he didn't really get the full effect, the full season. And then his senior year, he had a nice year. He was an all-league player and all that stuff. And we were in the upper league. And we won a CCS game, but then ultimately we ended up losing to Pally again in the playoffs. But it was great coaching both of them. They both like sports. In fact, and they're competitive. Like my Jake, his senior year, Jake played the whole senior year with a cracked bone in his foot, and so it was just the only way to get through the season. And so they both like it, I guess is my point, that they wanted to do it, and so they kind of have the similar perspective as I do. So when I'm talking about competition and things like that, they were in line with me.
And you seem like a mild-mannered guy off the court. What are you like on the court? Are you fiery?
I think I'm fiery in terms of wanting things done right, to have things done, things that we practice, to make sure that we play consistent. We don't give away things like that, I guess. So it's probably more demanding, I guess, at times. But I try to again be somewhat steady in terms of talking to the guys about, hey, we want to be continuously kind of growing, getting better as the season progresses, but also as the game progresses. We're trying to win the game in terms of, hey, 2 minutes went off the clock, 3 minutes went off the clock, we won 6-2. 2 more minutes went off the clock, 3 more minutes went off the clock. Hey, we got another 6-2 run or a 6-4 run. So, as you keep doing that, if you're consistent and you're not giving stuff away, then you give yourself a chance to win at the end. And so that's kind of my message, I guess, throughout the time.
What advice would you give yourself back in 1990 when you first started coaching?
Back then, it's interesting is at the time, you don't know what you don't know. And so, you start doing things. And I had a really good, successful season in 1990, my first year. We won the CCS, and we won a NorCal game. And we had some couple epic battles with Monta Vista at the time. Like, Monta Vista was a top 5 team in CCS, and we were a top 5 team in CCS. And we ended up winning 2 games in league, but also a quarterfinal CCS game. St. Francis that year, we had split with them, and then we had to play them in the semifinals of CCS. And we actually went on a run that year, and we beat them, outscored them 11-0 in the last minute 20 to win the game by 3. And then we went on and beat Leland in the CCS championship. And I guess the thing, going back to your question, is we were doing that stuff, and I was coaching, but I also didn't realize how much I wasn't coaching. What things I wasn't maybe addressing or missing out on, or things that I could have definitely done better at that time, because I was 25 years old at the time, I believe 25, 26. And it was my first time being the head guy at a varsity level. And then playing in pretty big games, right? For at least for our area. And so I really think it comes back to, you don't always know everything that you think you know, and that comes with time and comes with experience, and doing things like this, talking to you or talking to other coaches and listening to other coaches and listening to podcasts and things like that make you kind of think about things. Because I think the things that coaches have to remember is you don't always have all the answers all the time, or sometimes you might have the answer but you forgot it, like in a game you made a mistake or whatever the case may be. And your job is to try to fix it and also be accountable. I always believe in being accountable to the players, especially if I feel like there's something that I messed up on. Hey guys, this was my fault. Or even if it's a game plan thing, hey, this is our game plan, you need to do this. If you do this, then if it doesn't work out, it's my fault. Okay, it's on me. But you got to do that. You have to make sure you do the thing that we're talking about, or the thing that we're practicing. So like I said, I really think it is that at that time when you first start out, you don't always know everything. And you know what? That year, like I said, we won the section title, we won league and all that stuff. We won over 20 games, and I haven't won a section title since. So you never know when it's going to happen. Enjoy it, like you were saying earlier, and don't assume that it's going to become a regular occurrence, because it just doesn't always happen that way.
No doubt. I mean, yeah, same thing for me. We won the section my first varsity year as a head coach, and then we won one other time. We've been to the Open a ton of times too, but yeah, those are very few and far between, unless you go to certain schools in our league that seem to win them all. But I digress.
Yeah.
Who are some of the best coaches that may not get the notoriety as some of the coaches that get the best players? Some coaches that can really coach no matter what. I put you in that category. No matter what your team looks like, your teams are always prepared and ready to go. So who are some of those coaches that you really respect?
The high school coaches you're talking about?
Yep.
Around here. Well, there was a guy, I don't know where he's at now, but he did it for a long time. Jim Forthoffer at Mountain View. He had some teams that were fantastic, and he ran a motion that was great. And we had some real battles with them one year.
He ran that like elbow flare action, right?
Yep. And I had that at Gokul. And one year we lost to them, I think it was 5 times, because of playing them in tournaments. And we had like a couple times it was by 2 points and 4 points. I mean, they were good games, and we tried everything from playing man-to-man and switching things to going to a screwy zone and things like that. And Jim always had stuff going on with his team, and there was always stuff that you had to prepare for. Another guy is the guy who coaches at Mills, Rick Hansen. He always has his stuff going with his guys, and I really like how he had his approach to it. And when he has guys who can play, his teams are always real good.
Wow.
So that's a couple of guys, and then I coached against Peter Diepenbrock a lot, and Peter, obviously his teams are always tough.
And he was at the coaching clinic too.
Yeah, and so he always had, defensively, he was always tough. And then like I said, he always got, when he had good teams, his teams are achieving at high levels. So I have to always give him a lot of credit. Adam Sachs runs some offense that really makes it tough to guard and so forth.
Could be your doppelganger too.
Yeah. So there are guys. The league in general. Mike Davey is another guy. Mike Davey. Back in the day, there was a year where Mike and I,
the dad or the son.
The son, Mike, that Saratoga, and I was at. Gosh, that year I was at Lynbrook, and we ended up that year. I think we both ended up that year 10-2. But every time I went to go see him, the team zoned them, and I knew we were going to man them. So I ended up having to go 4 different times to go try to find a game where they were playing. A team was playing man to man against them to scout, because Mike always had so many different sets to be prepared for and so forth, and he still does. Still has lots of different things that he does and so forth. And so I have had a lot of battles with him through the years where we played games and so forth that were really tough games and just fun back and forth, but also nerve-wracking because of the things you're trying to tell your guys. Hey, you have to understand this. You've got to remember when this happens here, or that they're going to do this, or this, they're setting you up for this here, and so they're, like I said, in our league with Mountain View and Los Altos and different guys. Heck, Jeff over at Palo Alto now, they have a lot of guys who do a heck of a job. I had a lot of games with Tony McGilvery at Santa Clara, and then previously, like I was saying, at Monte Vista. He was the Monte Vista coach the year we won the CCS, and he had, like I said, a top 5 team in the section that year. Yeah, we have some coaches around the area that do a heck of a job and make it hard to get wins. It does. It makes it hard.
Did you ever have the itch to look at another opportunity outside of Cupertino?
Once I've been at Cupertino, I mean, I keep my ears open and so forth, but I mean, I'm teaching at Cupertino, so you're kind of locked in terms of as a teacher. And, I don't see myself, again, kind of going back to what you had said at the beginning with your family and your kids, chasing something all over the place. Like that would really, I think, put yourself in a position where now you're adding on maybe a whole next extra hour, 2 hours to that time frame, because now you're leaving Cupertino to go someplace else to coach and then do your practice and all that stuff. And who knows, since you're not on campus, are you not going to get the early practice time? Do you have to now take a later practice time? So now you've kind of got that 2-hour gap in between, and then you're going to go to practice. So for the most part, it's been that I was just, I'm at Cupertino, and that's kind of the way it worked out.
Right. Yeah. I'm probably going to be the same way, where like there's no, why would I want to go anywhere else? I mean, I like my administration. I like the people on the campus. We've got a great job. There's my kids are at the elementary school. I'll be there until they graduate. Let's just put it that way.
Well, why do you want to go chase or make your life more hectic than, and do something you like anyways?
Yeah, for sure. If there's a guest that should be on this show, who would it be? But you have to make the connection for me. You have to know them.
You're all the smoke.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. I stole that from them. I feel like I was doing it before, but I don't know.
Had their pod a few years now. Let's see. Okay, I saw that you've had Kevin on, you've had Patrick on. Well, I mean, if you haven't, Rick Hansen is a good coach.
Okay,
he's a good coach. That would be a guy. Have you had Diepenbrock on?
No, I just met him for the first time actually, and he was like, "Oh, I'm coming to Valley Christian to be an advanced scout." So he's friends with our men's coach Colin, who I'm good friends with. So he
would be a really good guy to have on.
Yeah, so I'm definitely.
He obviously coached Jeremy Lin,
right?
And he got to play in a lot of big games, obviously.
Yep, and then Adam came right after him, then, right?
Yeah, I think Adam was after Peter. Well, Peter, did it, stopped, and came
back.
His
wife actually works at Valley, I think.
Oh, does she? I didn't know that. Yeah.
Or somebody that he's related to, because there's a Diepenbrock on our campus for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll definitely. I didn't get his number at the clinic, so maybe you guys can connect this. But that would be somebody I would love to have on, and just more people like you. I mean, you shared so much knowledge today. I'm gonna definitely take a lot of the mental notes and things like that, and just the longevity. You should be super proud of all the accomplishments that you've had. From a relatively younger coach, as far as time spent coaching. I got a lot of respect for you, and just really grateful for your time.
Well, I thank you, and I appreciate that you're doing this. I think it's kind of neat that you're kind of giving a local flavor to it. That there's some notoriety. It's a place for local coaches to talk, and this was a lot of fun. I've never done something like this before, so I really enjoyed myself. So thank you very much.
No, you were great. It was my first time in a long time, so it took me a few minutes to get my bearings, but it was definitely a good conversation. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of value from it. So yeah, stay on until I put the outro out, if I remember how to do it. Let's see. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.